Hey, Kristyna. It's nice to
Hi,
see you today.
Trisha. Nice
Today,
to see
I'm
you too.
talking with Kristyna Samitz. She's in Austria. She is an RTT therapist. And Kristyna, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you're working a lot with medical related issues and physical body and rapid transformational therapy.
Yes, so this is something I also work with, but I also work a lot with anxiety and all things that have to do with fears or shame. So I also work with body issues, but also with fear issues and anxiety issues. So this is what I really like to support my
Hmm.
clients.
Yeah, I do a fair bit of anxiety as well. So how did you get
Mhm.
into the medical end of stuff?
Yeah, so for that, you need to know my background. So I studied medicine for almost 5 years.
Hmm.
And I always wanted to be a holistic doctor. So that's why I started to study medicine. But over the years, I really started to feel that I was not happy. It felt like something was missing. We always learned the physical side of things, but we never really learned about the emotional root causes
Hmm.
that can trigger illnesses. So I always felt that something was missing. And yeah, and one year, it was the fifth year of my studies, I was faced with a diagnosis with a life threatening illness. And I knew that something had to change. And this was the year that I ended my studies, and it was my new beginning. And I started to, after, of course, healing. So I also had a healing journey. I started to study RTT. And what fascinates me about RTT is that we really can get to the root cause of
Yeah.
things, whether it's emotional or physical. So, this is what is really fascinating for me. Of course, we also need to support the body when it's needed with supplements or other treatments. But when we can really solve the emotional root, the body's capacity to heal increases dramatically. So you know it, Trisha, you
I
experience it
do.
yourself.
I do because you and I worked together on my own thyroid issue.
Mhm.
Yeah, which is gone now. So,
Yes.
yeah, I
So
think it's super fascinating. And isn't it interesting how so many RTT therapists came to this searching for a solution to their own issue? And
mhm.
we found it to be, and I certainly did for myself, I found it to be so incredibly profoundly healing in all areas of my life that I just thought, oh, why is this not more widely known? And
Mhm.
how does one become this? And that took me on this whole other journey. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
And
I think
Trisha,
most of us learn that, how useful it is in our own life. And then we
mhm.
choose to apply it for others.
Yeah. And Trisha, can you tell us a bit more about your healing story? What happened?
Yes, well, I was in an abusive relationship for, almost 4 decades.
Mhm.
And I had absolutely no idea I was being abused. Looking back, of course, I see it. But, when you are in a relationship with a narcissist, everything revolves around them and their needs, their wants, and everything is your fault. And you're so bought into that whole delusion with them that you just can't see anything else. And of course, these things happen subtly, slowly over time. At least it did for me. Sometimes people are very overt and highly physically abusive. My spouse was a covert type, so everything was very much under the radar. And there were moments where I realized things weren't right, but then I would just apologize for it as if it was something I did, which I didn't. And all of that led me into a really dark place when the relationship finally did come to an end. And,
Mhm.
it was really, I was truly planning to end my life. And I
Mhm.
discovered RTT, and here
Mhm.
I am. So
Wow.
it literally saved my life in one afternoon.
Wow. I have goosebumps.
It's amazing, you know. That's not to say I
Yeah.
was all better in one day, of course, but it enabled me to just, you know, stop
Mm-hmm.
all of the, you know, internal dialogue and all of the, you know, misery that I was experiencing, the symptoms of CPTSD, and just to be able to think clearly for the first time in a long time.
Wow.
And that's what I do for other people now.
Mm-hmm. And Trisha, what has changed in your own life thanks to
Oh my God,
RTT?
everything, literally everything. Yeah. You know, I'm self-employed. I work from home. I see clients all over the world. I run a support group for narcissistic abuse victims.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, everything. Literally everything is different for me now.
Mm-hmm. And
And I
your
feel like,
health?
yeah, my health is amazing. And I feel like a completely different person now. I mean, I think you and I met, it's been almost 2 years now. And
Mm-hmm.
I feel like I'm a completely different person.
Yes. So I'm so happy for you.
Me too.
And I remember that you had the thyroid issues and the asthma for almost over 30 years, I
Yeah,
think.
yeah. And
Yeah.
it's just gone in the span of probably 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
I was able to stop all of that.
Wow. Yeah, I still remember our session, so I still know what what we saw. And of course, now that I hear that you made such great progress, it's just a confirmation for me that it works and
It does. It does. I
it's
see it every
real.
day.
Hmm.
Yeah. So what's in the future for you? Where are you going with your business?
Yeah, so I'm planning to, of course, I still offer RTT, Rapid Transformational Therapy, for I really enjoy supporting people with anxiety because this is an issue I also struggled with in the past. So I really like to help people to get really to become the most confident version of themselves and to really let go of all the old stories and beliefs that were in the past. And something that I currently also work on, I'm enrolled in quantum healing journeys hypnosis,
Oh wow.
which which is a spiritual type of hypnosis therapy. Because in my sessions, I encountered past lives. My clients really traveled spontaneously into past lives, and of course, I had the RTT tools. But now that I know that this could happen, I want to be equipped better. That's why I studied the
Mhm.
quantum journeys hypnosis. And this way, I can also work with past lives or traumas from other lifetimes. Call it how you want to call it.
Mhm.
But for me, it's real because I see it with my clients and I also see the changes that can be
Mhm.
also really, really dramatic but positive.
Yeah.
Mm, My sister did a RTT session with me, but we also worked with past lives because she saw it. So we worked on it. And
Is that something you guide them to, or it's something that spontaneously
no,
comes
it
up?
was really a spontaneous, in RTT, we travel back to past scenes in our childhood.
Right.
But this time she just saw past life scenes or scenes that can be described like a different lifetime. She was not herself, she was a different person. And there was also a pattern that was repeating. And her issue was that
Wow.
she was always in a workplace where she didn't feel appreciated or she didn't earn the money she wanted. And she always attracted a job where she overworked and where she
Mhm.
didn't earn the money she wanted. And in the past lives, we saw the same pattern that she worked a lot and never really got to enjoy her life. And in the session, we really released this, and she finally understood that she's free now to live the life she wants to live because we live in a modern world. Everything's different now, and we can really choose what we want to do with our
Mm.
lives. It's not that we need to work our whole life just that our family survives. So
Right.
yeah, she understood it. And 2 weeks, I think 2 or 3 weeks later, she was hired for a new job position, like out of the blue. And she earns, I think, 30% more or
Wow.
40% more. So that's when I knew this is also real. And past life regression is really, really powerful.
And is that what prompted you to do this other training?
Yes, one of the
Yeah.
one of the reasons, but I also had a spontaneous past life regression, so that's also another reason for me.
And so it happened to you too. And then how did that feel when you realized what was happening? Was that scary? Was it exciting? How did you feel about that?
Do you mean about the scenes that I saw
Yeah,
or
like
just about
realizing that you're
myself?
seeing a past life.
Mhm. No, I would say it was freeing to know that it doesn't end in just this life.
Mm,
It's because you
yeah,
feel that
yeah,
there's more than just this life, and you can also you have experiences from other lifetimes as well. And what I believe is that we don't come like a blank canvas to this world. We already carry in us a lot of wisdom and a lot of talents from other lives, and we can activate it in this life if we want to. But we also carry trauma and some patterns from other lifetimes, and sometimes it gets in the way of really
mm,
living this life fully. And
mm,
this is what I'm passionate about, to really help people to release the traumas and the patterns from past
yeah,
lives, because there's a lot.
yeah,
There's, for example,
yeah.
there's this wound called witch wound, and you know that in history wise women were persecuted,
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of women still carry this inside, what I
Isn't that
see now in my
interesting?
work.
I've
Mhm,
always been very much a skeptic about that kind of um, philosophy or belief, but I've
mhm,
seen it come up in other people's sessions as well with clients. And I actually had a conversation with Marissa Peer about it one day when I was in the live training. And
mhm,
what she said to me was, it doesn't really matter if it's real or isn't real. What matters is the client believes it is. And
yeah,
it isn't your job as a therapist to pass judgment on that belief. So that
mhm,
really helped me kind of put it all into perspective. It's like it's so completely real to some people, and to others, they may not believe it at all. But as that therapist, the most important thing to be able to do is to help your client um, kind of put these things into some kind of meaning in their life, and to realize what this message is, whatever the scene is, whether it's real, imagined, or not. It does not matter, right?
mhm,
Um, and for sure, if you believe it's real, then it's real. If you don't believe it's real, then it's not real. And that's
mhm,
where that comes into play. And I take that to heart. And I feel like, as a spiritual person, my horizons have expanded exponentially since becoming an RTT therapist. I had a very rigid view of how everything worked. And I realized that's not so for everybody. And it isn't my job to
mhm,
judge it or anything else. I'm just here to
mhm,
facilitate as that therapist, to
yeah,
facilitate you being able to, mingle that past life or scenes or whatever it happens to be that comes up in that session,
mhm,
and to help you learn to kind of incorporate all of that into your current thinking and understanding of yourself as a person.
mhm,
And so I have seen it come up, and it's really fascinating to me when it does. And it just makes me super curious, like, where does this come from?
yeah,
Yeah, I had one client, and um, she was trying to get along better with her sister. And what came up was her sister was telling her about her past life in this conversation. And she came within herself to have a deeper understanding and acceptance of her own sister through this whole thing. And her own past lives came up into play in it. And it was really fascinating. You know, I think it's
Yeah,
really
of course.
fascinating.
It's our job as therapists to
Mhm.
really be a safe place, and whatever comes
Yeah.
up is what comes up, and it's not our job to really question it. And whenever the client feels better afterwards, it's a sign that
Yeah.
it helped. And it doesn't matter if it was a fantasy or if it's real or if you believe in it, because if it helps, I think that's the most important thing.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Do you know Brian Weiss?
No.
He's a MD. He's the most, I would say, he's the most famous psychiatrist.
Sounds
And
really
he
familiar. I can't place the name.
And he was like the biggest skeptic. He was just working with the scientific evidence-based psychiatry tools. And then he started to have clients that traveled to past lives. And since then, he's like the leading expert on past lives. And he's really a firm believer because he sees it in his practice. And he says, I think he said that he had much more success with this kind of therapy than before. And he
Isn't
has
that
written a lot of
interesting?
books. I really recommend to,
Yeah,
yeah, to check it.
that's fascinating. Yeah. I know you had talked to me in my session about what's the guy's name? It's William something. He's the medical medium or
William?
something. Yeah.
Yes.
And I'm working with a client right now who actually has seen him.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. Because
Yeah.
it's so hard. I think it's not really even possible to get an appointment with him.
Yeah. Yeah. She said she has seen
Okay.
him, and it's been a long time ago, but yeah.
So for everyone who listens, Anthony William is called also the medical medium, and he has like a gift to see or know the root causes of the physical root causes of different illnesses. And I really recommend to read his books. It's amazing. So in my life also changed through his recommendations. I take the supplements he recommends, and I really feel that it works. And Trisha, you had I think I recommended to you a book about the thyroid
Yeah, it
health.
was I'm just looking on my shelf. It's the Thyroid Healing by the Medical Medium.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it
And how was it?
was great.
Did you read it?
Yeah, I read it.
Okay.
I did not delve into the diet part of it, that he has a lot of recipes and diet guidelines on there and supplements. I did some of
Mhm.
the supplements,
Yeah.
but I didn't do his diet.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I really, really like his work. And whenever I work with a client who has health issues, I always mention it because I really believe in holistic treatment. And whenever you can
Yeah.
do something else additionally to help your body heal on a physical level, I really think his recommendations are great.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know. I actually had a conversation with my regular doctor about that book after
Mhm.
you recommended it to me. And, a lot of his take on it is that it's Epstein-Barr virus that's gone
Yeah.
dormant into your nerves and your cells that
Hmm.
triggers the thyroid issues. And I
Hmm.
had this whole conversation with her about it. And I said, "What is your take on that?" And she said she'd actually read the book. So I was impressed. She said somebody
Hmm.
gave it to her, and at first she thought it was kind of a joke. She said, but the more she read and the more she thought about it, she realized he may be really onto something. And
Hmm.
I asked her, my thought was I was going to ask her if she could test me for Epstein-Barr or something. And she said, there aren't really good, reliable tests for it. There are some, but they're not really reliable. And she said, and I don't know to
Hmm.
what end that would, she said, your insurance isn't going to pay for that either. So I was just like,
Okay.
okay. But yeah, she
Yes.
said, he's not a quack, but she said, I think he's definitely he's onto something that's very compelling. It's very interesting.
Yes.
It's not
Yeah, and of
widely
course,
accepted though.
Yeah, that's the thing. But I think in the future it will be more and more accepted. And I always see the evidence when people report the
Mhm.
effects and the results they got. And there are thousands of people that healed
Yeah.
with his advice and protocol. So this is evidence enough for me.
Hmm.
And of course, when people are at the lowest point, at like the breaking point, they try everything. And sometimes it's a good thing because then they are open to something
Yeah.
different.
It's like all these traditional things didn't work for me. So now what? Yeah. Have
Yeah.
you seen there's a documentary called Heal? And Dr. Joe Dispenza is in it amongst a bunch of other people.
I think
And
I
it's
saw it.
so
Yeah.
interesting, so compelling. I
Hmm.
watched that recently. In fact, it was so good. I immediately rewound it and watched it again.
Really.
Yeah, it was
And
really, really good.
do they say something also about the subconscious mind?
There's a lot in there about the subconscious mind and that programming and how that affects you. I know there's this one part where Joe talks about, and Joe Dispenza, he talks about how most Western trained doctors don't know anything about the mind, about that connection, about nutrition and how that
Mhm.
plays on the body. They just get really basic information on anything
Yeah.
to do with food or sustenance,
Yes.
nutrition in general. And then, to understand how powerful the mind is
Hmm.
and how it can be utilized to heal the body in really
Hmm.
profound ways. And he said, my personal opinion is that unless you had cardiac arrest or you broke your leg or something of that nature, you have no reason to go to the doctor.
Hmm.
There are much better ways to heal.
Hmm.
And I think that that is probably true. I mean, we go to the doctor for pretty much anything and everything. It's like, okay, so you're sick, great. Um, but most of the time, there are other options, and you certainly, and I've seen it with my own body, to harness my
Hmm.
own mind to heal things.
Yeah. Yeah. I really can confirm this because, I studied medicine and I know that the
Yeah,
focus is really on the body. So the body is seen a bit like a machine. And
yeah,
when something is not working, you try to fix it or try to, yeah, cover sometimes also the
yeah.
symptoms, so just that the symptoms are not so strong. But it doesn't really go to the root cause most of the time. And for chronic illness, it doesn't really solve the problem. It just
Hmm.
tries to somehow cover the symptoms or so that they are not strong, but it's not really a solution for most of people, so they need to take medication for their whole life. So I don't think this is a solution.
Right. I
Yeah.
don't know if you've ever heard Marissa Peer talk about this, but she, a couple years ago, she was in a car accident and her leg was broken in several places.
Mhm.
And so while she was in the hospital with her leg in a cast healing, they were planning on doing some kind of surgery to repair the cartilage and the tendons. And it was going to be a number of weeks before they could do that. They were waiting for the bones to heal before they could do the surgery.
Mhm.
And Marissa said that while she was waiting for the bones to heal, she was imagining, like in self hypnosis or meditation, she was manifesting like a, what do you call it, a flock of butterflies, I guess.
Mhm.
And she would visualize them descending on her leg. And it was like the most darling little story she tells, where the butterflies all have little tiny knitting needles and they're in there knitting back together her
Mhm.
her tissue. And lo and behold, 6 weeks later, they took her in, when they took the cast off her leg, they took her in for an MRI or something. And the doctor
Mhm.
was stunned that all of the cartilage and tendons had been repaired. And he said,
Mhm.
that doesn't happen. They don't just grow back like that. And she was
Mhm.
just like,
Yeah.
I mean, it's a similar story to Joe Dispenza too, because he was in, I think, a car accident or something, and he was
Mm.
paralyzed.
Yeah, he was paralyzed, and I think he needed surgery. But if he would have done the surgery, I think he would need. I don't know how it was, but it was really an important decision if he would do the surgery or not. And he
Yeah.
decided to not do it and instead use his own mind and visualization. Of course, this is not like a recommendation for anyone, but
You have to
it
be
was his
really,
own
really
choice,
good at controlling your mind to do this stuff.
and I think it was the best choice he could do
Yeah.
in the situation because he had the power, the willpower to really do it. Yeah, his story is really famous. And I also see it with my clients. So you had this amazing recovery from the thyroid issues, then from your asthma. We didn't even work on the asthma, but I think it was connected maybe
Yeah.
with the thyroid issues. Maybe there was a similar root cause. Then my sister, I worked with her. She had a chronic infection in her bladder. And after our session, it also really she has no symptoms anymore. Then I had a lady who had celiac disease, which is like a disease in the bowels or in your gut.
Mhm.
And she has also not so her symptoms reduced a lot. She can go to a restaurant and eat things she was not able to eat before. She always developed symptoms. And I also had a lady who had migraines that
Yeah.
disappeared. So it's really the mind is a really, really important
Yeah.
healing factor.
I've
Of
been
course,
trying to
not.
talk my sister into letting me work with her on her migraines. So Gayla, listen.
Mhm.
She's so resistant to this. And she
Yeah.
has chronic, constant migraines. She has a migraine more than she doesn't have a migraine.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And what did she try so far?
Oh, she's done all of the medications and sees a neurologist and chiropractic and injections, you name it, she's tried it.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She basically
So,
just lives with her head hurting all the time. And I talked to her about this before, and she's like, we need to really work on this because there is a root cause to this, and I'm pretty sure we can
mhm.
eliminate that. I
Mhm.
also know that all the women in my family have chronic migraines, myself included. Mine mostly went away after my monthly visitor stopped visiting.
Mhm.
So it was mostly a hormonal thing, but my sister's has been severe through most of her life,
Mhm.
like debilitating pain.
Okay.
She has a
Yeah.
lot of trauma.
So when she will be ready, I think of course, you can never really mm, how could
Yeah,
I say this? You can never really push someone to do it.
right.
They have to be ready
Yeah,
for it. So,
for
yeah.
real. Yeah.
And Trisha, what did you learn about the subconscious mind since you started to work with clients? Because I'm so fascinated by this topic. What did you learn?
I feel like I'm just in so much awe of the power of the subconscious mind. And, in the early days of doing this work, everything was so surprising to me. Like, what? That doesn't make sense. And part of it was, like I said, I was very stuck in my own ways and my thoughts, and I was rigid, which is funny because I always thought I was a very open minded person.
Mhm.
But I now see that a little differently, and I understand and probably was more open minded than the average person, but I see things very differently now, and nothing surprises me anymore. Um,
Mhm.
it's just like the most powerful tool that anybody has possession of, but yet nobody knows how to use it.
Mhm.
you know,
I agree.
you know,
And how would you describe the subconscious mind or the role or how what it even is to someone who has not really an idea what the subconscious mind is?
I mean, it's like 95% of your brain is controlled by the subconscious. Everything you do, think, say, whatever, a lot of it is to do with the subconscious mind. You don't say to yourself, hey, I'm going to make my hair grow today, or I'm going to make my heart beat a little faster. Like, it's not a conscious thought. The conscious things that you think, are in the forefront of your mind, and you're consciously deciding, am I going to eat salad or chicken for dinner? But subconsciously, that's that little niggling in the back of your mind going, ooh, cookies. Let's have chocolate. And learning how to control and harness that, and it's in all areas of your life. It's, yeah, it controls so much of what you do. It stores all of your memories, your thoughts. The fact that through RTT, we can get at anything and everything you've ever thought, heard, said, or experienced in your entire life, through the subconscious mind. It's pretty phenomenal. I mean, I've had clients, myself included, who under hypnosis have brought up memories of things that they didn't actively remember. They had either suppressed it, or it happened before they were verbal. And they, I've actually had memories back as far as when I was 5 days old with such clarity. It's really amazing to me. Yeah. So the mind is super powerful, and it's like a giant mainframe computer in your head, and it records everything you experience in your entire life. You just have to be able to tap into it to access that information. And, because I deal a lot with trauma, people are really scared to go back and look at that stuff. And what I always tell people is, we're not reliving anything. And if the scenes from your past are too painful, the actions or the things that have happened are too painful, we're not actually needing to look at those. All I'm looking for is the feelings that you felt when a certain thing had happened, and what beliefs that you formed about yourself and the world in that moment. And that's what we're after. So it's a pretty profound experience to be able to help people to tap into those, thoughts and beliefs and feelings from so long ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really fascinating. And you had a few RTT sessions so far, Trisha, even with Marissa Peer, the founder of RTT.
Did.
So you
I did. I was one of Marissa's clients in my training. So that was probably one of the most profound experiences of my life. Plus the fact that you're doing, live therapy on a stage in front of people and on camera. So it's pretty intimidating stuff. And then you're sitting next to Marissa, who is just the most adorable little person in her Chanel blouse and her little hats. And she's just precious. I love the daylights out of that woman.
Yeah.
If it wasn't for her, none of us would be doing this work and helping people the way we do.
And Trisha, so you know how an RTT session feels. How is it for you? How does it feel? What do you see in an RTT session? So
you mean when I'm the client?
Yes. How is it for you?
I always think back to the very first time I did it, when I didn't even know what it was. I had no idea what to expect, no preformed, ideas about it. And I think that it must be similar for clients who come to you and they've never done this before. But I like to describe the feeling in my body or in my mind to my clients, how it felt to me. And I felt a little like my mind had been split into two entities, the conscious and the subconscious. It's almost like, normally they function together as one unit, right? But suddenly they were two separate parts. And I felt like maybe I was riding in a car and my conscious mind was sitting in the back seat observing, but the subconscious was driving. And I think because of TV and movies, we believe, some nonsense about what all of that would feel like. And you think you're going to quack like a duck and fall in love with the broom, or be made to do things and you don't remember it. And then you'll wake up and you're like, oh, what happened? But that's not real, right? It doesn't happen that way. In fact, you're hyper aware of everything that's happening.
Yeah.
And I was like this very conscious observer of everything, while this other part of my mind was going through the process of digging out these feelings and emotions, and almost, just watching, observing, and thinking about what was being said to me and what was being asked. And then almost in awe as I could hear my own voice answering questions that I hadn't even formulated consciously the answers to.
Mhm.
And then you would think, oh, right, that did happen. Oh, right. And it was such a kind of trippy experience, So I don't know if it feels that way to everybody, but that was my first experience with it. And then I find now, a few years on, I am so easy to hypnotize. I mean, you could probably just go, and then I would be like, oh, okay. If I
Mhm.
wanted to, I would be right into it. And I also have a much more physical experience with it now.
Mhm.
I notice when I'm listening to self-hypnosis tapes or anything like that,
Mhm.
um, I can actually feel sensations in my body. I can see bright lights flashing in my eyes and my mind. And I
Mhm.
truly believe what I'm seeing or experiencing is almost like the electrical connections in my brain. And I see them as
Mhm.
flashes of colored light. And
Wow.
I mean, that's a much more recent experience as I'm learning more and more and becoming more adept at traversing my own subconscious, I guess. And
Yes.
how do you feel? I mean, do you have
Yeah,
similar?
I feel like the more you have the experience of RTT session or another hypnotherapy session, you can really relax more because you see that there's nothing happening that is dangerous, and you can really become more relaxed. And every time I did an RTT session, it was easier and
Mhm.
felt more effortless. And I also feel that I'm a dream hypnosis client now because
Yeah.
it's so easy for me to go into a hypnotic state really fast. And I also listen to hypnosis audios when I work on a topic. Now I'm working on my anxiety when I fly because I will fly in 1 week to India.
Oh,
So
exciting.
yeah, so now I'm listening to hypnotic audio for fear of flying,
Mhm.
but it's not there anymore. I hope so. Yeah, so I'm really feel that every time I do a RTT session, because I still do them sometimes when I feel that I need to work on a topic.
Mhm.
I feel that it's easier and more revealing, but the first one was also really powerful, I have
Yeah.
to say, yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. I'm not doing, as the client, I'm not doing them as much now as I was. I think the last one I did was in October, and that
Mhm.
was my final weight loss session. And I've now dropped, 45 pounds,
Mhm.
which I think is
Yeah.
like 23 kilos. I don't know.
And did you do something else, Trisha, like nutrition changes, or do you think it was really most of the work was done
Well,
by
I eat completely differently now than I did before.
Mhm.
Um, and while yes, it's intentional, when you struggle with weight, and especially if you have a sugar addiction issue like I did, I'm sorry if my dogs are barking.
Yeah,
If you have a
never
sugar
mind.
addiction problem, it's really hard to curb that and to let go of that. But, and it's funny because I think I've had 5 or 6 weight loss sessions with RTT. And each
Mhm.
time I would notice a little difference, but nothing really was sticking. And
Mhm.
this last one, what I now realize is how tied to my own personal trauma and all of that garbage the weight issue was.
Mhm.
And trauma peels off in layers. So each
Mhm.
session was kind of pulling off one layer and disconnecting one association, essentially.
Mhm.
Because it often just works like one thing at a time. And that's really
Mhm.
how the mind works. So as it was peeling off, but it was that last session where I had this massive light bulb in my head, like boom, like, okay, something clicked. And then suddenly, partly because of what Marissa had ingrained in my mind and what this final session really did, it actually makes me repulsed by eating sugar or lots of carbs or anything, sugar in particular. To the point where I walked into a grocery store and they're, maybe baking something in the bakery, sweets, cakes, cookies, something. And I smell that, normally delicious smell of, oh, that smells amazing. And it actually physically made me nauseated and I had to leave the store. And this has been like what, 6 months now. I could even think about, making something, a cake or a pie or something. And then when I think about eating it, it makes my stomach really upset and it just doesn't appeal to me at all. I have eaten a few things here and there and it just doesn't taste good to me anymore.
Oh, I think everyone who wants to stop with sugar would wish to have to
Yeah,
experience something like this. That's really
right.
great.
So I don't miss it. I don't feel deprived. I just, I'm like programmed now to listen to my body. I eat when I'm hungry. I stop when I'm full. I crave salads and proteins and leafy greens and veggies and like real food. I
Yeah.
don't, weirdly, I think a lot of people believe that eating healthy costs more money. I'm telling you, it doesn't. My grocery bills are lower now.
Oh.
Yeah. I
Yeah,
cook
because
less, I clean up less, I spend
it,
less money, spend less time.
it
And
makes sense because healthy food has more nutrients. So I think it also makes you feel more full or satisfied. I don't know,
yeah,
because all the junk food is really empty. There's nothing in
yeah.
it.
Well, it drives you to eat more because it's just sugar and empty calories. Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you bulk up on protein and fiber, I mean, I generally eat 2 meals a day and I don't snack. Um, I have my thing in the morning and then I'm full until dinner time. I'm occasionally might get a little peckish in the late afternoon, and if anything, I'll grab a handful of nuts or something. And that's rare. Usually, I'm like, oh, okay, I'm fine. And I eat twice, and I'll catch myself once in a while. Maybe I'm bored, I don't have anything going on. I walk into the kitchen and I start like looking through the refrigerator, the old behaviors of, what's in here that looks good, and then I'm like, I'm not even hungry. Why am I doing this? And then I just leave.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can really change your habits. And this
Yeah.
was a habit for you. So it's really impressive, Trisha.
Yeah. When you can recognize what drives the behavior and then disconnect the behavior from the habits and the beliefs, I think
Yeah.
it's
And
possible.
also disconnect like the pleasure you link to things and the pain you link to things. And when you can link more pain to things that you don't want to do anymore, like
Yeah.
that's the key. That's everything.
Yeah. I mean, I know. And nothing, maybe it's Giselle Bundchen, one of those supermodels says, nothing feels as good as nothing tastes as good as skinny feels. And I always thought that
Uh-huh.
was such a goofy quote, but it kind of is true. um
I would maybe replace it with health. Nothing tastes better than health feels.
yes,
Like the
yeah.
best health you can have.
And my focus has never been solely about weight. Yes, I needed to drop some weight, but
Mhm.
I think as women we are really guilty of taking care of everyone and everything but ourselves. You take care of your kids, your dog, your house, your car, your hair, your clothes, your, whatever, your mother. But you don't take good care of yourself. Your body is your biggest asset. And,
Mm.
through all this process, I just said to myself, you know, as an adult, I can choose to take good care of myself or not. And from this day forward, if it's not good for me, it's not going in my mouth.
Mhm.
And, with the power of RTT, that became a fairly simple choice.
Mhm.
I just don't
Yeah.
have the desire to eat things that are junk.
Yeah.
I don't.
Yeah, I agree. Like your body, your health is the foundation because when you don't have it, you
Yeah.
have nothing else left. So it's really the foundation. Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Trisha, do you also work online with your clients?
I do almost exclusively online.
Mm-hmm.
I see a few people locally, if they're interested in doing it live. That's becoming less and less. Most people are so comfortable with doing things online that
Mm-hmm.
it's just a non-issue. But I
Yeah.
see a few people locally. I don't even have an office out of my home anymore, so it's a little awkward. If somebody wants to have an in-person session, I'll go to them, or occasionally they'll come to my place.
Yeah.
And I have a treatment area set up in my home, but it's my house. How about
And
you?
do you,
Do you see
yeah,
people
so
virtually or in person?
at the beginning, I did in-person sessions like face-to-face, but now I'm doing only online sessions because I see that it works in the same way.
Yeah.
No one has to have a long drive to me, so it's really
Yes.
working the same way. And once someone has closed their eyes, there's not really a difference because when you are in hypnosis, your eyes are closed, you just hear my voice, and I would say it's the same experience, of
Mhm.
course, a little bit different, but on
Yeah.
a level like on the effectiveness level, it's the same thing. We also work
Yes.
online together, and you,
Yes.
yeah, you had such great improvement. So it's really,
Yeah. And I would say that, especially if you're dealing with somebody that's anxious about the procedures or anything, they're a lot more at ease and calm if they're in their own environment. They're
Mhm,
sitting in their own couch or their bed or whatever, and they just
mhm,
feel comfortable that way. So they're not sitting in an unfamiliar place, with unfamiliar sounds or anybody around them. And they just feel safer in that way. There's occasionally I've had clients locally who, they've got kids, they can't, get peace and quiet for a couple hours where they don't have disturbances, that kind of thing. And we'll make
mhm,
other arrangements if they're local.
mhm.
But generally speaking, I think, especially if you're dealing with trauma, anxiety, depression, that kind of stuff, people are just so much more at ease in their own environment.
Yeah, I agree. And there's not, of course, when you're traveling somewhere, sometimes it's a bit more stress than if you can just join from your, I don't know, sofa or bed. So it's really a more relaxed
Mhm.
experience, I would
I
say.
would say so.
Yeah.
Yes.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Great.
I think it's amazing. Gosh, my phone is making all kinds of noises now. It's amazing, the advent of Zoom and how that took off during COVID, and it's just opened up the world of possibilities.
Hmm.
I've had a number of people saying they're looking for, a professional for this, that, or the other thing, and they're looking locally for somebody. I was like, why are you looking locally? Just go on Google and find somebody. It doesn't matter where in the world they are. They can still
Hmm.
help you with this unless it's something you have to do in person.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I mean,
I
it's
agree.
not like you're looking for a dentist to clean your teeth. you know,
It's
they
true.
don't have to see you in person.
Yeah,
Yeah, and
true.
it's really very much like we're in person. I mean, there's no lag. There's, it just feels. You could be sitting across the table from me right now, and it just feels
Yeah.
exactly like if we were chatting over the, tea at the kitchen table.
Hmm. Yeah. And Trisha, what are the most common questions when clients come to you? Like, do they have questions or fears, how it could be like? And what do you
Yeah,
say
I
to them?
think I think people are just nervous about how it's going to feel, especially their first time. They're scared about facing, what may come up because they don't know. Um, and then people are always asking, well, not everybody, but a lot of clients, just before they begin, they'll always ask if there are any guarantees that this is going to work. And I both love and hate that question. It's like, well, do you ask your doctor if they guarantee that, you're going to survive a surgery or you're going to survive cancer treatment? Do you ask your therapist if they're going to guarantee you're going to get better? No. Um, and of course, we can't guarantee that because we're not the ones doing the work. You are. The client is the one doing the work. We're just guiding and facilitating and
Mm,
asking the right questions and being curious enough to pull the right information out of them and helping them to make meaning from it. So, and I'm also not in your house making sure you're listening to your audio recording after the sessions or following through on instructions. So I can't very well guarantee that,
Yeah, and of course, everyone is different. So,
Right.
like, everyone needs a different dosage of medication. Everyone needs a different, number of sessions. Sometimes one session is
Yeah.
enough. Sometimes we need 3 sessions. Sometimes the best thing is to really work over a few months
Mhm.
together. So
Yeah.
it's really, you have to have an open mind and to see how it goes, I would say.
Yeah. I think,
Mhm.
what I like to tell people is if you really want this change and you really own that, it will happen. If you believe anything is possible and that we are going to find the root cause of this, that's what I will guarantee is we'll find the root cause. What you do with that is up to you,
Mm,
But I
yeah.
think once people experience the changes and they understand it, they feel a lot more at ease about it.
Mhm.
I
Yeah.
think I feel like, overall it's probably a 90 to 95% success rate. And I don't think you're going to get that kind of a, success with most other types of treatment.
Yeah. Yeah. So some of my clients that were in therapy for
Years.
many years, that had the bigger breakthroughs with one RTT session, and I totally understand because it's a different tool. We don't talk about the issue. We really look in your subconscious mind where this all started. So it's
Yeah,
really a completely different approach, and we save so much time because you don't have to talk about everything that happened because 80% was not really relevant to this issue. And what
for
we do
sure.
is really to go back to the things that really triggered the symptoms or the issues. And we don't have to talk about the
Mhm.
80% that had nothing to do with it.
Yeah.
So I would say really it saves so much time that you can spend with for other things, and it's so efficient. So I really feel like it's the most efficient
Yeah,
healing
it
tool
really
that
is.
I so far
Yeah.
really.
I worked with a young woman that had been diagnosed with um, borderline personality disorder. And I've
Mm,
come to really hate that term because people think it's some big, terrible thing like it being narcissist or a psychopath or something. And really, for the most part, it's just really deep, complex trauma. And this young woman, she's like 25 or something. And when she came to me, she was suicidal. Um, she truly believed she was a terrible person and she couldn't understand why anybody would even like her. She had nothing going for her. She was just miserable.
mhm,
And she'd been in therapy her entire life, her entire
mm,
25 years, basically, she'd been in therapy. And there was so much childhood trauma. Like her mother
mhm,
was emotionally distant. Her father was a narcissist and abandoned them. She was molested when she was a child. All kinds of stuff had happened. And she just reported to me that she felt such deep self-loathing for herself. And within a number of sessions, I think we did 3 or 4 sessions, she had just started dating somebody when we started working together. And this was over the course of a number of months. When we finished our last session, she said, I feel like a different person.
mm,
You've done more for me in a few sessions than all of the therapists put together that I've seen over the years. She stopped taking her medications that she was on. She no longer needed anxiety or depression medications. Um, she was sleeping well. Her boyfriend proposed to her and she said yes. She was reconnecting with friends that she had given up on because she was sure that they didn't actually like her, which was never true. It was her own trauma. She got a really good paying job and a
mhm,
promotion. They put an offer on a house and it was accepted, like all these things. And then she even began to repair the rupture in her relationship with her mother.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like this whole, chain of events that kind of began to fall into place toward the end of our work together. And then over the next 2 months, all of this stuff happened to her. And she said, I attribute it to RTT.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a new life. I mean, of course.
Mm-hmm.
This is something I also hear. So also a young woman that worked with me, she also said that she feels like a different person after one session.
Yeah.
So I know the power of RTT, and everything in her life also changed to the better. So her anxiety reduced greatly, her depression disappeared, her migraines disappeared, and she started to work on her health, and she had the courage to go off her medication for anxiety. Of course, she worked with her doctor, so it was not like my decision, it was her decision.
Of course.
But everything changed to the better.
Yeah.
And I really can see it. Yeah, it's great.
I feel so privileged every day that I get to do this work and walk alongside of these people and see the changes that transform their lives, and to help facilitate those changes. It's I don't know, I just feel profoundly lucky to do this work.
Yeah, and it's also still, like you said at the beginning, it's like, why is this not common? And I would say every time when something new starts, it's always a pioneer. Like in this case, Marissa Peer. It's always, I believe it's always one person that changes the
Yeah.
one industry or one area
Right.
of something. It's
Right.
not the system or the established system. It's really a person who changes it. And I think Marissa says that she thinks that RTT or something like RTT will be the future of therapy. And I agree. And I think we are at the beginning now. And
Yeah.
it will over the time, because it has already a lot of awards, I think. You know
Yes,
it?
it has.
Yeah.
I know, and it's fairly well known in the UK, which is where Marissa's from. And people say, is this new? And they're shocked to find out it's been around 35 or 40 years. But the reality is that it's Marissa's own therapy process that she developed. And she alone is the only person that did this therapy for most of her career. And it was only in the last, I don't know, I think 8 years or so, I'm not sure exactly when the school came about, that she started teaching, because she's getting older. And I think the thought was, this needs to be shared, or when she ceases to, work in this field, if she ever retires, I don't know. But, at some point, Marissa will no longer be doing the work. And she wanted to pass the torch. So it has been around, but it's only been Marissa doing the work for most of that time. Now I think there's something like 16 or 18,000 RTT therapists, but that's across worldwide. So I don't know how many there are in the US or Austria or anywhere else, but it's still a limited number. But
Yeah.
it's growing.
It's growing. That's true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we're just trying to get the word out, spread the word. There's this amazing therapy that's available to you, and it's available anywhere you live if you have the internet.
And Trisha, how can people, what topics or what issues do you work on with others? So what can you help others with?
Yeah, I work mostly with narcissistic abuse. And that's a huge umbrella. So under that comes any number of self-sabotage, binge eating, overeating, food addiction, smoking cessation, alcohol and drug abuse, anxiety and depression. So all of these areas kind of interrelate with that abuse type thing. And of course, like in my own case, thyroid issue. All of these things kind of interconnect under this big umbrella of trauma, specifically narcissistic abuse. And that's kind of the area that I work, because that's my firsthand knowledge and expertise. So, and I also work, and now I like to say I work with borderline personality disorder since I've had a successful case with that. Yeah, so it's primarily what I do.
And I'm sure it will change a bit over time, but let's see where it will take you in a few
Yeah.
years.
I don't really get into the physical body stuff very much, beyond helping somebody with weight or sugar addictions, that kind of stuff. But when it's more health related, that's not really my area. I also don't work with kids or teenagers.
Okay.
I don't know if you worked with kids at all.
No, not so
Some
far.
therapists specialize in it, and I think it's best to just allow that to the specialists because kids and teenagers
Yeah,
are really
I
very
agree.
specific. Yeah. Anyway, well, it's been great chatting with you today, and I'm really happy to catch up and know that you're doing well and you're over there still doing good work. And if anybody needs some help with their thyroid or other physical ailments, Kristyna's out there doing this work.
Yes, and anxiety and fears and
Mhm.
confidence blocks too. I really enjoy
Yeah,
this.
all of that self-love, confidence, money blocks, all of those things also fall into my sphere as well. So really, there's not too many things that I would not jump onto, but yeah. All right. Well,
Yeah.
it's been great chatting, and I'm super happy to catch up with you today.
Thank you, Trisha. It was really a great time. And thank you
Yeah,
for all your questions.
absolutely.